So welcome to the Hugh Gallery. My name is Logan Sisley and I'm the curator of this exhibition, Cecil King, Present in Time Future. Cecil King, I think, is one of the most interesting and important art artists of the 20th century, and he was born in Rathdrum in County Wicklow in 1921, so this year marks the centenary of his birth. So we're delighted to put on display this exhibition of his work, all from the collection of Hugh Gallery, with which he had a strong association in his lifetime. His first retrospective exhibition was held here. That's the catalogue, held here in 1981. And he was also involved with the Rosk exhibitions, which I'll discuss a little bit later, and was vice chair of Rosk when it was held here in the gallery in 1977. And we have a great collection of his prints and paintings and also tapestry. And the works date from the 1960s, the early 60s until the mid-1980s. He had an interesting story, I guess, as an artist. He began a career in business and was very successful. He worked in printing and became director of McGowan's in Dundalk, but became increasingly interested as a collector of contemporary art through artists such as Barbara Warren and Milton Johnson, and initially through collecting he began to look at work and became interested in how it was made, and then took some lessons from Milton Johnson and embarked on his own path as an artist. And while he was still working, he held his first solo exhibition in 1959 at the David Hendricks Gallery, which is one of the premier leading galleries in Dublin at the time. So it was relatively quick progression to attain that kind of level, and he then left the world of business and devoted his time to becoming a full-time artist in 1964, and had a really extensive kind of exhibiting history, exhibiting regularly in Ireland, but also across Europe and further afield, travelling with the work, organising exhibitions, which we'll come to, hugely important, I think, sort of catalyst for things happening in the Dublin art scene. He would also exhibit his own collection, so I think a very generous, spirited person as well, and clearly exhibited huge energy and passion for bringing contemporary art to as many people as possible. So today I'm going to take you through the gallery as best I can on camera. We'll take a look at the works on display, and I hope that it will encourage you to visit the gallery. The show is now open, as we're now to open galleries again on May the 11th, and we'll continue through the summer until November. So I hope this will be interesting and learn a little bit more about the artist, but also to encourage you to come and see the gallery and also the other exhibitions and collections that we have on display again. These slightly perhaps more restrained brushwork, but still very vigorous, particularly in these kind of areas here, these organic forms which recur in a lot of drawings actually and paintings from the early 60s. And I guess again the sense of the light and the turned on image, you get this wonderful glow which may not be visible on the screen. And even though the paint is applied differently to some of the later works, we still have this interest in the relationship between form, large areas of relatively flat colour, and then this kind of taut lines, and the relationships between colours as well. And all of those elements, I think, remain true throughout his work, as we'll see, even when it becomes more, it's been termed kind of hard edge painting, but I think there's a certain, that term almost doesn't do it justice, because there's a real softness and a kind of humanity to his paintings. So here we have a painting and a series of prints from the early 1970s. The painting on the left is called Nexus. It's such a striking work, large in scale, and it has this incredibly intense red, punctuated by these two black slivers, these two angled forms which kind of punctuate the canvas. And these are painted by eye. Often everything appears very ordered and symmetrical, but everything is done by eye, by hand. So there's very subtle shifts in the line and in the composition, and that creates a real energy in the work, a sense of space and depth and movement, and the kind of black and the red really shift and kind of pulsate in front of your eyes. The painting was used on the cover of the exhibition catalogue to Cecil King's 1981 Retrospective Exhibition, which is held here at the Curator Gallery. And that was, I guess, a hugely important exhibition for the artist, surveying over 20 years of his work, but also interesting for the gallery. Exhibitions have been hosted, or temporary exhibitions as we kind of know them today, sporadically in the 1930s and the 1940s. In 1933 there was a Rodin exhibition, but those early ones were often organised by committees that were kind of memorial exhibitions to artists. And then in the 1960s the Arts Council of Ireland brought an awful lot of Arts Council organised exhibitions to the gallery. But the gallery often didn't organise its own exhibitions as we know today, which we have a very kind of lively programme. And Ethna Waldron, who was a curator at the time, wrote in the catalogue that this was the first retrospective exhibition dedicated to one artist, organised by the gallery as opposed to a kind of committee. So it's a really, I think, important, significant moment both for the artist and for the gallery, and I think it shows the esteem in which he was held at the time, that he would be kind of given that accolade of a retrospective exhibition in the City Art Gallery. This group of prints on the right is called the Berlin Suite. So this series of 6 screen prints called the Berlin Suite was created after a visit to Berlin, and I guess, of course, at the time Berlin was a divided city, and this is in 1970, divided between East and West Germany. There was a wall, a partition, and so you get the contrast, the sense of contrast between the two sides of that wall and the two kind of environments that Cecil King encountered. And very often his work, even though it's abstracted, is responding to the world around him, is responding to particular places, and it is kind of based on observation and sort of a distillation of that sensation of the place, not so much in topographical features. But there's going to be another coffee conversation looking more specifically at the Berlin Suite and the Berlin series of paintings, so I won't say too much about that right now. But it's interesting to note that this suite of prints was published by Editions Electo. And here we have 4 other prints that were published by Editions Electo. We've two prints on the left, which are called variations of the same composition, called Intrusion. There's Intrusion Green and Intrusion Red. And then the 2 prints on the right are Threshold Orange at the top and Threshold Black. And all 4 prints date from 1974. And Editions Electo were a print publishing house who distributed prints published by contemporary artists or created by contemporary artists. And I guess there was a kind of an ethos around making it more artwork, more accessible, contemporary art more accessible, more affordable to a kind of a wider range of collectors. And they editioned prints by really significant contemporary artists such as Eduardo Bartolozzi, Julian Ayres, David Hockney and Richard Hamilton, and of course Cecil King. And they were really one of the preeminent print publishing houses of their day, particularly associated with pop art. And they had studios in London with master printmakers. So Cecil King would have worked with different master printmakers in the studios there to create these prints. These are screen prints, which is a technique, I guess, perhaps more traditionally associated with commercial printmaking or graphic design, in which a kind of stenciled image is transferred through a screen, so the ink is forced through a screen with a stenciled image on it onto the paper to produce the images. And these are done, I think, each in 3 colours. These wonderful kind of pulsating colours, particularly the vibrant orange, the vibrant red, contrasted with blacks and browns, which again create this kind of sense of movement and space. And then these shifts, and really, really beautifully kind of printed if you're into that kind of thing. In terms of the detail, the gradation of the tone here is really fantastic. And this is another suite of prints, again screen prints, but published by a different publishing house, by Editions Monica Beck. And Monica Beck also had a gallery in Germany, in Saarbrücken, in the south of Germany, near the border with France. And Cecil King also worked with Editions Monica Beck over a number of years, printing a number of editions. This is called the Saarbrücken Suite. So again, like the Berlin Suite, it's this idea of responding to a particular place. And even in his earlier works, there was the Bagot Street series, there was a Harlem series later on as well. So again, this was a kind of theme that he found throughout his career, this response to place. Again, these extraordinary colours that he would conjure up. As I said, Cecil King worked with Monica Beck over a number of years, and another of the editions that Editions Monica Beck published with Cecil King was a series of sonnets by Seamus Heaney called the Glenmore Sonnets, with illustrations by Cecil King. That was one of a number of collaborations with writers. And in between these 2 series of prints, we have another painting. So this painting, Intrusion 2, is one of 2 works we have in the collection that were given by A.W.D. King, Cecil King's brother, in memory of the artist. And this is a work that dates from 1985. A wonderful green background, and that's something I think is really distinctive in King's work, is his use of colour. And it's very, I think, very personal and distinctive colour mixes that he creates. And against this you have this kind of black void in the centre of the painting, which is further animated by the break and punctuation with this kind of white form, which I guess is the kind of this idea of intrusion in the title. It's almost like a bullet that has been shot into the black, creating this kind of rupture in the form, and this wonderful kind of dark inky black. And we have 2 other works on the opposite wall, also from the 1980s. So we'll spin around. 2 works here, also from the 1980s, Link 3 on the right, and Pendulum on the left, another larger scale painting. Link 3, like so many works, I guess there's this idea, as suggested in the title, of working through an idea in a series. And the idea of the link or the intrusions in the previous painting, they're often, these titles I think suggest a kind of point to what you find in the painting, but there's also often a degree of ambiguity. The link, is it connecting or is it kind of breaking things apart? And in both these 2 works you have this kind of this line which swings out from the kind of central form, again with this kind of exquisite placement of pieces of white, which really animate the canvas. And this work, Pendulum, again maybe hard to see on screen, but if you can visit the gallery, there's also this kind of ambiguity in terms of the depth of the painting. Is the black form a kind of a void beyond? Is the pendulum swinging towards you, side to side? It's extraordinary, I think, sometimes the way he creates such kind of multiple readings of what is happening in the painting with just such kind of sparse forms and colours. Cecil King was not only a hugely important artist and a very prolific artist, but was also actively involved in a lot of arts and community organisations throughout his lifetime, notably Onoiga, the Irish Youth Hostel Association, and contributed to many exhibitions, notably ROSC, and was also a founding member of the Contemporary Irish Art Society, which was established I think in 1962 and was hugely beneficial to the gallery in terms of adding to its contemporary collection in the 1960s and the 1970s. As I mentioned, Cecil King was also actively involved with ROSC, and he was on the committee from the very first exhibition in 1967. And ROSC was a series of exhibitions that took place from 1967 to 1988, which brought, in a large-scale way, contemporary international art to Ireland, very often shown alongside historical works. For example, in the first ROSC in 1967, ancient Celtic work was shown in conjunction with the modern art. And Cecil King remained on the committee, were actively involved throughout his lifetime. He was vice chair of the committee when ROSC was held here in the Curator Gallery in 1977. And in the final ROSC in 1988, he was an exhibiting artist. He was honoured posthumously as he had passed away in 1986. And the painting here on the left, Pendulum, was one of the works that was shown at ROSC in 1988. And the architect, Michael Scott, who was the driving force of all the ROSC exhibitions, paid tribute to the artist at the time. He said Cecil's passion for the whole concept of ROSC was immense, and combined with his quiet charm, vast knowledge and capacity for hard work, helped greatly to secure the success and continuation of ROSC. And Cecil King was very particularly involved with the hanging of the exhibitions and the installation of them. And I think his eye as an artist was a great benefit for the installation, and the hanging and display of the works was often praised. So that was, I guess, just a brief overview of the Cecil King exhibition, present and time future. All the works here are from the collection of the Curator Gallery, and we're thrilled to be able to present them to you in 2021, which is the centenary year of Cecil King's birth. We opened a little later because of the pandemic, obviously, than we would have hoped, but we're thrilled that the gallery is again open to visitors, open to the public from the 11th of May. And the show will be on until November, so I hope you will have a chance throughout the summer to come and see the works for yourself, and you can explore our other programs related to this and other exhibitions on our website, www.hulane.ie. Thanks, and I hope to see you in the gallery soon.